Alright, what's up peeps of the internet? So we're back with another review. This time it's for the Dynamic Principles SLPC, SPL, CXI, whatever the fuck, SL whatever, 2.0 super low profile plate carrier. There you go, yeah, SLPC. Wow, genius. This video is going well already. Alright, so it's the SLPC 2.0 ultra cool, slim, lightweight, skeletonized, awesome laser cut nonsense of a plate carrier. And we're going to talk about it today. We're also going to talk about all the other shit that could potentially go along with it that you could do with it. There really isn't that much for me to say about this, so this will be a shorter review than average. Alright, so let's move this aside for a second and start at the beginning.
A very good place to start.
Alright, so here we have your main plate bags. This is a design that's kind of very similar to stuff like the WTF PC13 and similar, where it's basically the exact same thing for the front and the rear with some minor differences. So we're just going to start with the front and mainly talk about the front because it's basically the same thing as the rear, except for like one or two little differences. I mean, even the top Velcro panel is basically the same exact size and in the same exact place, so cool. Keeps things easy to deal with. Alright, so basically what we have here is a plate carrier that is made almost entirely of two pieces of laser cut laminate, which is pretty smart, and I wish I'd have thought of that. I ran across this plate carrier some months back and just sort of like took one look at it and went, I don't know about that. But then I saw Thinline Defense, their review about it, and I was like, that might be more interesting than I thought it was. TLDR, overall, it's a pretty good idea that more or less does a lot of the things that I've been griping at about plate carriers over this entire course of, the series of reviews I've done on all these, slick, scalable, lightweight plate carriers. This, ironically, as basic and skeletonized and like stripped down as it looks, at the same time still manages to keep a lot of the features that I've been saying that a carrier of the slim, slick variety like this should have in order to be a complete carrier, or for you to make the end user to make a complete system out of it. And I would say that overall, it's more impressive than I thought it was going to be, although it is still a little bit lacking in some areas. So let's get into it. So for the front plate bag, you've got your pretty much classic slick scalable plate carrier design. You got your loop Velcro field, you got your buckles, and you've got your loop / molly area here at the upper top of the carrier. The great thing with this laser cut laminate is without having to add any extra layers of laminate or webbing or anything, the maximum level of scalability is maintained because you have a functional piece of loop Velcro for putting a patch on here, but you still are able to maintain the same, if not slightly more, molly spacing than a traditional type carrier would have in the same area for attaching anything that you want. This is great because you can not only play with, like if you had a admin pouch here, you could play with the height of it a little bit since you've got an extra row here. The other thing though that I'm thinking about this is going to be a little bit more useful is for like potentially taking maybe a couple pieces of one wrap and running them through here and like make a little loop out of them, and you could use that to run like comm cables or whatever through and use that underneath the admin pouch as a way to like control that. This is Velcro. This is the Velcro area. This is where a placard would attach to. That's what that does. Yes, dear listener, you absolutely do need me to explain to you how Velcro works, because what else would the internet be for? But yeah, they didn't waste any time with trying to do extra like loop here or a kangaroo pouch or whatever the fuck other companies like to still try to do. They basically realized that the vast majority of people are going to use some sort of placard, and with the plethora of them out in the market, it would be stupid to try and not just lean into that. And so they've just completely leaned into that 100% and put a piece of Velcro on there with buckles. And I agree with this 100%, and I kind of wish other carriers would do this as well, like just put Velcro on the front, because we all know everyone's going to use a fucking placard anyway. The only downside to this is these buckles, due to the design of this and the way it's cut over here, which we'll get into in a minute, this is the only position you can put them in. You can't like put them up or, you know, raise them a little bit like some other carriers have the option to. So if you have a placard that's, you know, a little bit different about ride height or has adjustable length for the swift clips, this is it. So you may end up with a situation where your placard may run down a little bit and leave some of the Velcro exposed at the top. Not that big a deal, in my opinion. If you really had a problem with this Velcro getting narfed up because of that, just take a a piece of hook loop, a piece of sewn on hook, and just turn it over and lay it on the top of this in whatever width it needs to be, so that will, you know, cover that up and provide something for it to abrade against without you messing up the loop, if that becomes a problem. Now on the plus side, this goes into something I want to say as far as like the scalability of this thing, because, you know, one thing I kind of have talked about in the previous reviews with other carriers is getting these swift clip female buckles on and off the webbing that on there is usually just an utter pain in the dick. It's always so tight and so impossible to get on and off that it takes an absurd amount of time and effort to do so. And it's really not fast to do it. And one thing that I always have talked about is my big like deal with going over these is the scalability of it, because especially dealing with like the civilian side of things, you want to be able to go from being able to wear your overt loadout to stripping all that shit off and then wearing it slick so you can put it like, you know, under a shirt or whatever if you need to use it that way, which, let's be real, is probably more the way we're all going to use it at some point in the future if need be. The one thing nice about this is that these buckles are, when the plate carrier is fully assembled like this, are super tight on here. Like there's no, very little play at all. Which was nice because I thought that with the way that this is very skeletonized and that there's only a couple of you know, strips of laminate here, I thought that this was going to really be wobbly and wiggly here and not be, you know, fixed in place. But it's, as you can see, I'm giving it a pretty good yank and it's barely moving. However, all you have to do is undo the top piece and the side piece, and now you get a ton of extra slack here, which makes it extremely easy to just pop these off. And now that I'm trying to do it on camera, I can't do it, but anyways, as you can see, super easy to get it off. And then all you have to do is just Velcro this back closed, and it's done. Even with my fucking around on camera here, because I can't do anything right on camera, it took me all of what, 10 seconds to do that? Again, with the extremely minimalist design of this thing, it's already a very slick package. Even the rear panel here, which has the, I got the added on flap accessory because it's required, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But even with that on there, it's, you know, a very slim extra piece there that you don't really have to worry about taking off if you don't want to use different components with it. We'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so yeah, so, you know, you pop your placard off, you undo 2 straps, pull the buckles off, and it's slick. Obviously, if you had something, you know, mollied on here, that could be a little extra time, but it's kind of the same thing where if you undo the top piece, you get a ton of slickness, and then all you have to do is undo these, and it becomes extremely easy to basically just pull this front piece down and, you know, yank off your pouches that are molled on here. You don't have to kind of like, you know, it's not like a traditional carrier where this is all fixed in place. It's, you know, all fixed in place. It's all sewn to the front of the thing. You can't get to it any other way than interfacing with the molly straps through the top of them, you know, like you would normally. So you always have to, you know, fight with unstitching, you know, raveling the molly webbing pieces that are through there. Whereas this you can get to both the front and the back of it, which makes it extremely fast to get it on and off. And then you just put it back together. That's all there is to it. It's extremely quick to scale up and down. especially with the front panel. So that's very unique, and I don't think I've seen any other plate carrier on the market that really has that level of access to taking on or taking off all the crap you want to add to the front of the carrier. The other cool thing about it too is that the thing works from both the top or the bottom. So when you're initially assembling it, you're probably going to put the plate in there and put this over it and everything. But then you're going to look at this and go, oh, it's all together, and I'd have to, if I want to change plates, right? Let's say I have a thicker plate that I want to wear for my over stuff, and then a really thin plate that you want to wear concealed. Oh, I have to change plates. I'm going to have to take it all apart and do, nope. You don't have to do that, because it has almost like an A-jack-ish type feature, if you're familiar with that plate carrier, where you can, again, undo the top two angled side pieces here, and now it's just basically just a sleeve that's in. And if I can do this, once again, as you can see, I'm highly skilled at accomplishing things on camera. But once you get it going, you can just slide the whole plate right out, take whatever other plate you want, stick it in there, and then, with a few seconds of adjustment, the plate carrier is not only back in there, but you can very quickly adjust the side pieces to tighten it back up if you have a thinner plate. So in short, basically, this is a carrier that not only is like sized to fit, any plate you want into it, but it can scale not just what you put on the outside of it on the fly, it can scale what you put on the inside of it on the fly too. So you never actually, especially if it's kind of a pain in the ass to put together initially, once you've got it together, you never really have to entirely take the whole thing apart to resize it to fit other plates in it, if you have more than one set of plates you're going to use. All right, so there you go. That, just take it to make sure it's pretty straight. Put that over. This over. And it's back in. So however long it took me to do that, and that's with my plate where this side is a little bit fucked up and it has a piece of cordura that sticks off it that has caught on every single one of these on the way down. So with me having to finagle the plate back in there, it took, 15 seconds to put it back in. Amazing, wondrous. Oh, it's never been seen before. Same thing with this side buckle here. You want to put it back on. With the plate in here, mind you. And it's done. So however long that just took to do that. That's pretty amazing compared to pretty much every other carrier on the market that I've used that uses this kind of system. Usually I have to break out what I like to call my tactical screwdriver, which has a nice wide and flat tip that you have to kind of dig into the webbing and hold it up and finagle everything back together with. Which, by the way, if you've been dealing with Molly for any amount of time in your gear journey and you don't have a screwdriver that you use to do that, you're doing it wrong. You're making life way harder for yourself, and you should definitely get one immediately. All right, the other cool thing that this can do, and this is both for, again, the front and back, because it's the same thing, is it has the laser cut, areas on the top, as well as on the sides. So you can use this top area here, again, for anything you can stick between a 1-inch set of slots. So if you want to attach a handset to it, you can kind of slip that in there. If you want to use it for routing wires or cabling or something, or if you want to put some pieces of one wrap through it and make little loops that go up, or whatever you might want to do it, you can kind of do a variety of things with this. And this gives it another area that you can use to attach stuff. Same thing with the sides. Excuse me. As this is, I believe a 1-inch pieces of 1-inch strips of laminate. So anything that would attach to 1-inch moly, like any single moly pouch on the market, you could theoretically put here. So like something like if you already own a tourniquet sleeve, like say one of the Shaw tourniquet sleeves, you can attach that to the side here, and the cummerbund will still run over the top of it just fine. It'll maybe bulge a little bit, but totally a doable thing. And then of course on the bottom as well, you have an area which does get a little fucked up because it has to meet the curve of the plate, so it's not super ideal, but you could always still stick some bungee, like some shock cord through this, and use it as a slot to store a tourniquet or an antenna or cabling or whatever the hell else you're gonna do with this carrier in the slot as well. So it has some interesting extra areas at the edges that, short of by sheer virtue of this being a piece of laser cut laminate, that it can kind of do in a way that traditional, Cordura carriers can't always really do. How useful that will actually be in practice, it's kind of up to you, but I thought that was a nice extra feature. As far as the shoulder straps go, they're pretty standard. That being said, I generally like the design of having it with the rear straps forward adjusting, so they're constantly coming forward because they put this laser cut area here, so you can have, let's say here-ish, and when it's on, you can have a little bit of 1-inch moly, so you can either attach things to it, which I don't know what you want to attach to it, but you can use it to run your cabling through, or what you call it, a water bladder tube or something. Again, a very nice addition to this because a lot of carriers don't have any sort of webbing on just the regular shoulder straps that go as part of the carrier. They're just 2-inch pieces of webbing, and then you have to rely on either adding a couple pieces of one wrap, wrapped around the entire shoulder strap, or you have to add some sort of shoulder pad or shoulder sleeve or something if you want to have a way to control cabling or a water bladder tube or something like that. So this has already kind of got it inherently as part of it, where you could just use some shock cord or some 1-wrap or something like that to control whatever is running down that shoulder strap and not have to add another part to the carrier if need be. The shoulder straps also have, as you can see, a good angle to them. It's perhaps not quite as good as the Beez, but it's good enough. It's definitely significantly better than something like the AC1 or the LV119. I found it just as comfortable to wear as any other carrier I've talked about here that I've said has been a comfortable carrier. This is also a comfortable carrier. Ironically, these shoulder straps being, a whopping 2 pieces of laminate are somehow still better than the AC1 shoulder straps. Somehow they're less just floppy and non-weight bearing like those shoulder straps are that I've talked about in previous years with those. And so they're a little bit more, reminds me a lot more like the Beez shoulder straps, where it's very similar, where it's a couple pieces of laminate. So I guess this laminate stuff that these companies are using must differ somehow from the T-Rex stuff, and is a little bit more, perhaps maybe a little more laterally stiff, is what I'm thinking. And that overall leads to it being a bit more able to bear the weight of the carrier and spread the weight over your shoulders, especially in conjunction with a proper angle to the shoulder straps. In my testing with this, I did use both the shoulder straps naked by themselves like this, as well as with a Velocity Systems shoulder pad sleeve, the slip over pads that Velocity System makes, which in my opinion are the ideal, OG shoulder straps that, carriers like this really kind of like to work with. And ironically, I actually found this carrier more comfortable without the sleeves than with the sleeves on it. It does work well with that type of sleeve. In fact, that's what, if you're looking for shoulder pads for this, I'd recommend that you get is the Velocity Systems shoulder pad slip over sleeves. They're perfect. They're just the right amount of padding and flexibility without being excessive, and they maintain the level of flexibility that the shoulder straps have. So when the shoulder straps are sort of like naturally able to like flex and conform to the shape of your shoulders and the curve around that area, those won't interfere with that too much. That being said, for some inexplicable reason, like I said, I found this carrier just as comfortable without the sleeves as I did with them. In fact, it may even been slightly more comfortable without the sleeves. That's very odd, and I've never had carriers do that before, but go figure. They did something right with the shoulder straps on this thing, and yay. I'm not complaining. As far as the interior goes, this is something that has, like, it's a pro, but also there's a little bit of a con to it. So on the bright side, when I saw the initial design of this, and I saw the way that especially these upper pieces want to sit on top of the other pieces on the back of this thing, I took one look at this and the way this is overlapping here, and I was like, that's going to be uncomfortable, because this overlapping over itself here on these corners is going to create a bunch of material piling up on each other, and it's going to create little points, and those points are going to be hot spots against your chest when you're wearing it, and it's going to be an area that's going to rub and be uncomfortable and just annoying to wear. However, this is a two pieces of one wrap attached to a piece of laminate. The laminate does not go all the way down the middle of it. It just attaches at the end, which, okay, a choice I guess, but but either way, it's just one wrap, and it's super flexible, so it does not cause hot spots in these areas, as I suspected, because of the flexibility and the softness of the back of this one wrap. It's a non-issue. My gripe with it is that it's one wrap. That's it. Like this whole back piece is just a single, that's it. It's just one single layer of one wrap. Or some sort of Velcro. Maybe it's not even one wrap. This might just be Velcro because it doesn't have the, hook on the back of it. So it might be something else, just some sort of semi-thick Velcro. Feels a hell of a lot like one wrap on this side though, so whatever. Anyways, I'm gonna call it one wrap. Because that's what it feels like. And that's what the weave of it looks like. So I'm calling it one wrap. It's one wrap. There you go, official one wrap. But that's the thing. Are you kidding me? They're mowing now. Bastards. Well, you guys are just gonna have to enjoy the dulcet tones of mowers running outside, because this is the time of day I had to do this. The show must go on. Alright, anyways, it's one wrap. I'm not super enthused that this are just little one wrap tabs that are attached to the laminate. I kind of would prefer the laminate to flow all the way through the piece for maximum level of strength and sewing purchase on it. That's a little lame. Granted, this is on the back of the carrier. It is basically just holding these pieces in place, and when it's on you and there's pressure against it, unless you were going to put something here that was going to exert an extreme amount of lateral side pressure that would be pulling on this on the side, that could potentially, if in some way this was locked to the back of the carrier super tightly, so tightly that it couldn't move, and then there was something pulling on this that was like just exerting an extreme amount of lateral force on this, you're probably not going to have an issue with it. But I'm talking about just as, in terms of just like general use, considering that these pieces are also only single stitch on there. It's a choice. And one of the few gripes I have to make about this carrier, but, you know, there it is. The second more important gripe I have with this is that it's one wrap. It's high. If you ever wore like a Gripe plate carrier, right, the harness on that, the entire back and like sleeves of it on the underside are this same kind of one wrap type of Velcro material. And if you ever wore that in hot weather, you know, like that thing gets hot fast, and you basically have to wear it with the very expensive pads that Gripe sells to go along with it. So this is the same thing. This gets hot real fast. If you're gonna wear this, you know, concealed or something like that, it's just you're gonna just have to put up with. Granted, if you're wearing it concealed in, you know, in urban setting, the most likely instances you're going to be sitting in your car, which hopefully you have air conditioning, but mostly you have air conditioning in the car, and then you're going to be going into probably a store or building that also has air conditioning, so, you know, not too bad if you're wearing it concealed. But if you're going to wear this normally, and it's all loaded up with all your crap, it gets hot real fast. However, this is where this comes in. These little body armor ice vent things that you may have seen floating around the internet for years and years. This is like the perfect opportunity to use them, because holy shit, wouldn't you know that the sort of kind of downside of this all being one wrap in the back means that it's all loop Velcro type surface, which means, much like some of the other carriers I've talked about here, where I was like, man, I wish it would rather have loop on the back instead of the 3D mesh padding, like, you know, the Beez and a couple other ones. The Beez actually does this. It has the, you know, strips of Velcro here, and I was like, that's super great for attaching things like this to it. There you go. The whole back end is already set up to do that. So if you're gonna load this stuff up with all your gear and shit, it's already set up to use with these super handy little ice vent panels. So there you go. All you have to do is you can either, I found one place on the internet, it was on Etsy, that actually sells proper double-sided Velcro with like a, you know, two hook sides instead of it being a hook and a loop. So you can get that, or what you can do is you can take the adhesive hook that comes with these armament panels and just like fold it in half so it adheres to itself, and then you have two sides of hook. It's just, you know, a little bit thicker than average, but either way, this thing is already basically set up to use with these armament panels, which I will say, if you're going to wear this loaded up, is kind of a must. You could also take something that was like, you know, if you had some kind of like hook-backed like pontoons, you could potentially also use that as well. However, I've found that the better solution is these, because this covers the entire back of the plate. And again, depending on the thickness of your plates, as you can see here, this has a little bit of a overrun of the laminate material onto the back of the plate. So if you're using the pontoons, that's going to push them closer towards the center of the plate, which could affect how the plate feels when you're wearing it, and maybe not be as great. Whereas with these, it covers the entire thing. All you have to do is just change the position of the hook Velcro to attach it, and it doesn't matter. Alright, running over to the rear bag real quick. I made sure to get their accessory flap that they sell for only $24.95 extra.
Batteries not included.
I made sure to get this because the standard configuration just has this one piece of 4-inch Velcro, which is something that I've talked about ad nauseum in previous plate carrier reviews, and something that's super freaking annoying with other carriers that do this, especially the ones that don't put a full-size like 5 or 6-inch piece on the back, because it's basically sized now for your average like 2-band cummerbund, which they suck and I hate them. There, I said it. But it's not sized to fit a general sized cummerbund, and if you've got a carrier that's going to be kind of like a, you know, slit to scalable concept, you need to be able to put on pretty much any cummerbund within reason that the end user may want to put on it. And having a short piece of Velcro, let alone one that doesn't have a flap covering it, is just an egregious miss on that concept. However, at least these guys were kind enough to come up with an accessory in the shape of this little one wrap and Velcro combination of laser cut piece of laminate here that is a flap you can add on here, and I've just put it on here like this because I got lazy. Really, you should be running these things through the webbing slots here for the proper and more secure fit. But as I was playing with this, taking it on and all this stuff, I got lazy and just decided I got tired of doing that. So there it is right now for this. You can, of course, also do it like this. It's just not quite as secure as it could be, / should be. So basically what this does is it provides you with the very much needed flap that will go on here to cover up either a regular old elastic cummerbund or any other cummerbund you want to put on here to ensure that it doesn't either fall off or get yanked off or etc. so forth and so on. You know, the things that people complain about that can happen if you have a bare cummerbund just exposed on the back of the carrier. So I was fully prepared to not bother with this carrier in the first place because it was missing that. But then I saw that they sold this accessory panel, and I was like, yeah, it's an extra $25, but it's worth it. I will say this is not only a much needed accessory for this plate carrier, but I would say almost like it's a required accessory for this plate carrier. And to be quite blunt, they should just sell it with the plate bags, not as an extra accessory. Seriously, just it should be part of the plate bag package. Like, you're gonna want it. You're gonna want it. You're gonna get more use out of it than you think. And it's just, you know, an extremely simple design. It's just one piece of laminate, one piece of Velcro, and then, you know, one piece of this one wrap stuff with a piece of hook on the bottom of it. So once you add it on here, it's such a little, well, this isn't really gonna do it justice, but it's such a small bit of extra profile that even if you were going to leave it on and wear this thing concealed, it's not going to make much difference at all in the concealability of it, unless you're going to wear like a super tight shirt, in which case everyone's going to know you're wearing a plate carrier anyway. You don't have to worry like, oh, it was such a pain in the ass to put together, because it is a pain in the ass to get these things. Velcro, loop Velcro on hook Velcro is always just an abominable tribulation to try to get together, and this thing is a pain in the ass to properly weave through here. Like I said, I just got tired of doing it. So once you've got it on here, you're not going to want to take it off. But you don't need to take it off, because this doesn't really add any appreciable profile to it, even with, if you're going to wear it concealed with the, the factory cummerbund that you can get to go with it. These pieces back here where it hooks in is also just 2 pieces of Velcro. It's such a non-appreciable amount of thickness that it adds to it that, like I said, unless you were wearing a super tight shirt, it's not going to matter. However, where it really shines is the fact that now you can properly add pretty much any other cummerbund you want to the thing. Hallelujah! Finally, a super stripped down carrier that kind of, like, they get it. I will say this, I don't understand why the hell they put a 4-inch piece of Velcro back here when we all know you've got normal sized pieces of Velcro. Why not just put this same thing? It just makes no sense at all. Even with the flap on here now, you have just this random like blank space. It's all right, George. That has no Velcro, and it's just super dumb. It's just dumb. That's the thing with it. Like it's not with, once you put the flap on here, it fits nice and tight together. The hook on the flap goes all the way to the top, you know, of it where it meets the plate carrier. So it's not like you're gonna lose the purchase here. But it's just dumb. It's just a fucking dumb design choice. That's my gripe about it. It's just fucking stupid. We know you've got the full-size Velcro, but no, we're going to go out of our way to put a small piece on the back because fuck you, end user. I don't get it. And this isn't the only plate carrier I've seen do this, where they have a normal-sized piece in the front and then a half-ass size in the back. Like, come on, guys, really? You're telling me it's genuinely easier to use 2 different sizes of Velcro than just use 2 of the same size? Like, would they save 10 cents on using a smaller piece of Velcro? It's, you know what? I have nothing else to say. It's nonsensical. Go figure. Nobody will ever understand why they do this, but go figure. that aside, so like even if you're using a cummerbund like this Velocity Systems Scarab cummerbund, where it has these like individual bands on it, this won't make a lick of difference with this, because once you pull this thing over it, and you lock it all down in there, this thing tucks around to the bottom and basically just folds on top of these Velcro panels here. Or if you really want to get just, you were really concerned that for some reason that this might pull off and might come undone, whatever, you can always put this on first and then put these side panels over the top of it to really lock this on. Or if you found that when you're taking this on and off, these corners were getting caught or something, you know, you could put this on differently. But for now, just as, you know, do it quickly. It just slaps around the back of it, and that's it. You've now attached a complete cummerbund with all your crap on it to this. That took all of, what, was it 15 seconds, including my talking? And once it's on there, it's not coming out. Like, you're not gonna have to worry about it. This is something I've seen, oh, who the hell was it? There's a couple other carriers in the market that they have a full flap on the back, but the back flap doesn't have hook Velcro on the back of it, and then it also has a 4-inch piece of Velcro on the carrier. So what happens is, taking this weird design out of the picture even, is if you have a cummerbund that has, you know, just a full-size, you know, piece of elastic, like the Haley cummerbund I was talking about a while back, or one of the other Velocity Systems ones, or the Defense Mechanisms ones that are, you know, the laser cut with the, you know, full-size pieces, etc. It does nothing to secure that top, like, you know, 1 to 1.5 inches. So that top 1.5 inches is always just sort of free floating up there. And what that can lead to sometimes, especially if you have heavy things on the sides of, you know, of the cummerbund, is sometimes that can lead to, when you're wearing it, this top, like, sagging and canting out more than it would or should normally, which is why it's super important to have all your Velcro and everything needs to be, you know, secured to itself, so that you don't get that extra bit of sag and flop at the top. That can happen sometimes. But with this, it's not a big deal. This back panel fits on here really tightly, and it has, you know, the hook Velcro all the way to the top, which means it locks everything in here just fine, no matter what cummerbund design that you use, whether it's a completely, you know, full piece of Velcro or weird little fingers like this, won't be a problem. On the topic of cummerbunds, I will say that one of my other gripes with this carrier is, Jesus, is the factory elastic cummerbund that comes with this as like the sort of, well, it doesn't come with it, it's an extra option, but it's sort of like the standard option that you see kind of, you know, going around with, that people are testing it with, and that you see kind of pictures of it with. It is a single layer of elastic, and then at the front it is a layer of hook Velcro, a layer of laminate, and then at the rear it's a layer of hook and loop. It's, you know, pretty basic, and meh. You know, not to crap on them too hard, but I don't see this thing being worth $38. Especially when you can get basically the exact same thing from Velocity Systems. It'll be, I think, a 4 or 5 inch, and I believe theirs is a double layer of Velcro, so basically it's, you know, it's like this, where it's a double layer of elastic, and theirs is like $45, I think. It's super unimpressive. It's kind of expensive for what it is. If you already have an elastic cummerbund, the cool thing about this carrier is, you know, between the Velcro and this flap and everything, whatever basically cummerbund you can find on the market that will fit on this thing will work with it. So if you already have an elastic cummerbund, or you want something that's a little bit more, you know, got a little more oomph behind it, one of the other ones would be the one to go with. It's good for basically one thing, and that is wearing the thing concealed, because it's just super freaking thin. But that's basically it, and to be quite blunt, like, if I took the pouches off of this cummerbund, you can conceal this pretty well too, because it's basically just, you know, 2 layers of webbing. It's, you know, not all that hard to conceal if you're already wearing a plate carrier. Or something like, you know, the Velocity Systems cummerbund, which, you know, even with a doubled up layer of elastic isn't going to make a lick of difference as far as concealability, but it is going to make a bit of difference in long-term longevity and the way it actually fits around you. I've come to prefer the ones that are doubled up elastic because they're a little bit stiffer, and not only does that, in my opinion, help it hug your torso and kind of like flop and kind of bounce and sag a little bit less than I like with elastic cummerbunds, which is why I kind of don't really use them anymore, is because I just hate the way the plate carriers fit with them. I've found that the long-term longevity of something with a doubled up layer of elastic is generally a bit better than the cummerbunds with a single layer. But yeah, so you know, it's a minimalist elastic cummerbund. It's super unimpressive. If you want to spend $38 on it, that's your prerogative. As far as the rest of this goes, overall, the thing is exceptionally good quality. Overall, there really isn't much to say about this carrier that is genuinely bad. Like, I've got some minor quibbles with some of the design features and stuff, but as far as the design goes, I mean, it's a laser cut piece of laminate. How can you possibly go wrong? But there are some areas on it that's sewn, and the sewing is fine. There is, you know, some areas that are single stitched that I kind of wish were doubled, mainly on this back flap. Given that this is something that there's going to be a good bit of strain on, with it constantly being, you know, pulled up and down, I do wish they had not just doubled up the top, but I wish they'd also doubled up the sides and the bottom around the Velcro. Considering issues I've had in the past with that, that is definitely a spot that takes a lot of strain and really should have had another pass around it, just to be sure. These, you know, flaps here for the one wrap, as well as on the inside, this is all, you know, single stitched. Velcro on the shoulder straps, that's also single stitched on here. That being said, this is what, like, the difference in between a lot of carriers is, that the single stitch on this is actually very well done. This is like, you know, kind of like what I said with the slick strip back in the day. It's the good shit. It's tight, it's even, there's no fucking weird shit going on with this. There are a couple little hiccups here and there. I'm not sure you'll be able to see this, but like on the left shoulder strap, there is a little hiccup here, a little bit of a run here, little hiccup. I don't know what to call it other than a hiccup. It like does this little skip hop thing, but the majority of the carrier doesn't have that on it. There was another one somewhere, but I can't find it, so it probably didn't matter. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Is mainly on the left strap here. Is there's like 1, 2, 3 or 4 little hiccups. Beep, 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 beep. Everything else is fine. So I'm guessing I'm gonna chalk that up to just, you know, sometimes the machine skips a little bit. But given the rest of what I'm seeing here, you know, even though it's a lot of single stitching, it's straight, it's tight, it's at the you know, intervals you expect it to be. Where it started and locked down is actually Beez, take note, is actually locked in place. Note how it meets up back where it's supposed to be, and there's a, you know, bit of shit going on here where it's locked in, where it's, you know, like it's supposed to be. Same thing on the back here, where you get to the areas where it's started and stopped on the sides. It's tight, everything meets up where it's supposed to do, and there's several lines going back and forth where it's locking itself in place. You know, like it's supposed to be. I haven't seen anywhere on this entire carrier where they, like, you know, miss a corner, like I was talking about in my most recent review about the Beez Redux, where like they would do something like they'd get to the end here and then cut this corner, you know, at an angle, or like do this weird, you know, like you know, just veer around like a cul-de-sac, you know, just round it off and come here. Now this is all straight corners, precise. Even the little tiny cuts here, which I wouldn't have expected them to adhere to, I would just gone, you know, either to round it off here or straight and then, you know, go over. Now, these little tiny little angles here, yes, they went through the trouble to turn the stitching for a whole 3 stitches and then come back around to it. Same thing at the, where the fucking straps go. You know, same thing at the front straps with the little angles. It's where it's supposed to be, comes down, hits the angle, comes across, hits the other angle. Like there's no this fucking, you know, just we didn't feel like hitting the corners today, so we're just gonna like cut across it or round it off. Nope. it's tight and it's precise, and that's exactly how it should be. The hilarious part is when you get to something like this, where this is the what you call it, the Velcro front piece on the front plate bag, and the inside of this has been basically, as you can see, they went at it. Like, this is, I'm not sure, like quadruple sewn, I want to say. It's like a quad stitch, and the corners on it are like really beefed up. Like, I don't know what they're expecting you to attach to the front of this thing, but they made damn sure that whatever it is you're going to attach to this, it's not coming off ever. Like, that Velcro was going to stay on there until like the end of time. Same thing with what you call it. They do it at the bottom here. Yeah, at the bottom, at the bottom here, with the and the bottom where the this main panel of one wrappish type stuff is sewn onto the actual main body of the laminate. Same thing here. They've like quadruple stitched it down, and like the areas at the ends where it locks in are like really locked in. They're like, lock in, bros.
Do it, and do it, and do it, and do it. That's the hack.
Maybe it's like they realized that being the type of design this is, where, you know, it's all kind of like one piece, and then they just sort of like had to sew some Velcro to it. They're like, bros, they're gonna know that we barely had to do any sewing for this, so we have to do something to like make up for the lack of sewing required for this. So we have to use X amount of stitching to make this be a real plate carrier, so just put it on there. Put that on there, sew that crazy so that we can make up the allotment of thread needed to make it a real plate carrier. Anyways, as I've said, I'd rather see somebody go absolutely over the top and making damn sure that, you know, the stitching is what it needs to be to get the job done and have longevity to it. So I'm not complaining, I just think it's hilarious, especially after some of the other carriers I've seen, and the overall trend there seems to be these days towards, like, you know, like a lot of the rest of this carrier, everything's sort of single stitched. And then for some inexplicable reason, this is like, yes, all the stitching there. Go figure. But either way, I think they could have like taken a little bit of this down and, like, you know, done just like double stitching, maybe triple stitching, you know, whatever. And then saved some of the other stitching that they use here and reallocate it to like over here for like the edge of this back panel, so that it could, you know, be a little bit more a little bit more around the edge for durability. But other than that, the sewing on this is fine. You're not going to have problems with it. At least for my sample of one, it's properly done and how it should be. And some other companies on the market, Beez, should take a lesson from that. As far as the overall design goes, the one remaining gripe I have is with the way that the carrier is designed in the front. And the way it is it leaves a bit of a corner here, and this corner is just exposed. I really don't like that, because again, it's leaving this corner to be, you know, poked and hit with everything. I'll show you from the back side, even with a plate in it. When you have a plate in here, your plate's usually kind of round a little bit at the edge. You know, they don't like square like this does. So what this does is, because the edge of the plate is rounded off, it leaves these square corners exposed here, and they kind of hang off the edge a little bit. I don't think, you know, unless you had a size large plate in here, this would still be an issue. But if you're wearing a medium plate, like most people do, this is going to leave, you know, the corners hanging off here. And these, especially, it's not so bad on the back, because you've got this extra flap that's going over it and covering it. And then the cummerbund that, you know, if you're wearing a full-size cummerbund that's, you know, running across it, it's not as bad on the back, but on the front, it is definitely noticeable. Both if you're wearing it slick, as well as if you have a placard on here, because the placard's attaching to this, and often if your placard attaches towards the bottom of it, it's constantly pulling at the edge of this when you like take it on and off. Everything is like kind of hitting this because it's at the front and everything hits the front of it. And what this is doing very quickly is putting a lot of extra wear and tear on these edges. It's going to end up not really even being a matter of, like, you know, I could say that, oh, well, you know, being that this is mainly, you know, single stitched around here, that they should double it up, you know, to make it more reinforced. But at the end of the day, it's really not going to make that much of a difference, if they were to do that, because this edge hanging out here is still an edge hanging out here, and it's always going to be hitting at, it's going to be impossible to ever fully, perfectly meld the Velcro to the laminate, at least with the way this is being put together now in current production methods, until there's some way to just like heat gun it together where it becomes one piece. There's always going to be a gap here. There's always going to be some, a split of material here, and because of that, it's always going to get tweaked as time goes by and wear and tear happens to this carrier, and this is always going to get fucked up. If there's any point on this carrier that has very few weak points, given its like single piece design, this would be it, is these exposed corners. Like the material is going to start to wear out, and the stitching is going to start to get, pulled up in this area. What I would probably have considered doing in order to combat this would have been to shift piece down to the bottom of it so that, it's a complete piece of laminate here and doesn't leave a corner. So I don't think it will really hurt the design overall if you were to be, moved down in order to eliminate that hanging corner. But that would be like, if there was one thing that I would say would probably be worth changing, that would be it. That and the really stupid piece of short Velcro in the back here. As far as the rest goes, the other sort of minor gripe I have is I am not a fan of like skeletonized plate carriers that leave your plate exposed on like the edges and like the interior of it. This is something that there's been, some debate over the years about how, safe it is to do that per like the longevity of your plate. I generally err on the side of I don't like it, because even if your plate isn't being, abraded on or, soaked or rained on, whatever, it's still exposed to areas that are, it's still being exposed to UV rays in those areas, and that is going to break down the material faster than it would if it wasn't exposed. You could argue this plate carrier isn't that bad, like it's mainly on the edges, and you're getting a little bit here, but how much is that really gonna do it? Because it's just, it's little slits, but I also don't trust a lot of the coverings that are on these plates. Like people will look at like a plate like this, and they'll say, oh, well, it'll be fine, right? It's Cordura, like what could possibly go wrong? I'm looking at going, this is adhesive Cordura. It's not like, sewn on, or like, a one-piece, like sleeve that it's like sealed into, or like kind of like the military style, like sappy coating, where it's like just a one-piece coating on the outside of it, where it doesn't really matter. But for something like this is a couple pieces of like a Cordura wrap that is on here with adhesives. So the more wetness, the more UV and other shit, the more abrasion that it's exposed to is going to potentially lead to this stuff delaminating off of here and coming unstuck, and then exposing the interior of the plate. And obviously these are composite plates, so it's got a strike face in the front, but it's a bunch of layers of soft armor in the back. If you've ever watching the plate tests for these things, these are HESCO 3810s, by the way. It's a composite plate. It's covered with adhesive fucking Cordura, and I don't trust it. Again, in my opinion, it kind of would depend on what type of plate you're running. I would err on the side of wearing some plate covers with this, which brings us to a whole new set of problems, and that is finding fucking plate covers, which are very difficult to do. Being the smartest that I am, the only ones that are really available on the market these days are the SNES Precision like plate stock, and they're like $75, and I was not going to pay $75 for something that I'm basically doing a T&E review on. If I was going to keep this long term, I would have done that just to try this out for a little while and do a review on it. Nah. So I decided to kind of kill two birds with one stone, and that is get some plate covers to use with this, as well as try out the ever ubiquitous $20 per set Chinesian ones that you see floating around the market all over the place. And so to start with, like I was kind of impressed. Like the material they're made out of is that weird like paper shit that looks and feels kind of like Cordura on the outside, but the inside is just, it's very strange and like has that paperish feel to it. And then if you like hold it up to a light, you can basically kind of like see right through it. Anyways, it's that shitty Cordura from overseas. That being said, for $11, You know, like the Velcro is fine. The stitching on it is absolutely excellent. It's nice and tight. It's tripled up, you know, at the edges here. Like it's really well done. And all my heaving and like pulling on it and shit that I did trying to get on my plates, none of the stitching actually busted on it. So for $10 per piece, that's surprisingly well done. And I didn't care so much about, you know, the outside being real Cordura, because it's just a sacrificial layer I was getting to protect the plate from, you know, abrasion and UVs and getting wet and shit. So, you know, I didn't care. I would have served its purpose. However, being the absolute geniuses that these people overseas are who make clones of shit, they forgot an incredibly simple and obvious yet important step, and that is the SNS plate socks that they are mimicking with this are made of tweave, or some sort of tweevish-like material. And they kind of stretch. And what these geniuses did with these is they made them out of Cordura, or some sort of Cordura-like material. But they forgot that the real ones stretch. So they've sized these covers to the size that the socks are when slack, which is like a size medium small. So, imagine my shock when I got these and attempted to put them on my medium-sized plates, and then they don't fit. Like, you can stick them on there, and it starts to look, you know, like it's gonna work. And like the top fits alright, but like as soon as you get around to the bottom, well, alright, so we've got the top lined up to the edge here, where it should be. Alright, there it goes, line up, come to the bottom, and oh shit. It's not working. It's not even close. Oh. Yeah, that's cool. So there you go, fellas. If you want plate covers, the SNS plate socks are the only game in town, and you must get the actual real ones because they're made of the correct material to stretch over your plate. The overseas ones made out of the Chinesium rip-off Cordura won't do that because they don't understand how plate sizing works. And the hilarious part is, these aren't really like, you know, full-size plates. Like these are a little bit thinner than average. These are under an inch thick. So there should have been for a plate cover that was sized for a normal size sappy plate, there should have been even maybe a little bit of slack with these plates, but they're actually so undersized because they didn't size them correctly because they forgot that the material needs to stretch to get on here. Is now they're sized for basically a size small plate. So that's cool. So if you're hoping for a budget version of the SNS plate socks, you can't have it. That being said, like I mentioned, if I was going to keep this and use it as a scalable system for like my go-to scalable carrier, I would definitely invest in the plate socks, just because I'm paranoid about fucking up my plates, which were very expensive, and I can't really afford to replace them just because they got ruined from wearing them. Like, that's just stupid. Alright, so now that we've covered all like the features and stuff, I'll have a word or two about this plate carrier actually being used. That is, actually loaded up all your shit and like with a full load of stuff. The long story short is, basically when I talk about like I tried this on with stuff, is basically I've been testing these plate carriers out with the full load that I already carry, which is a front and rear plate, the Hesco 3810s, 6 rifle mags, 3 pistol mags, an IFAK, a radio, a multi-tool, a 16-ounce, an Nalgene of water, smoke, and a bunch of random shit like handheld lights and notebooks and stuff in a little like a front, like I have what you call a Shaw Nerd admin pouch on the front of the placard. Altogether, with the plate carrier and everything, my loadout usually comes around, depending on the plate carrier weight with all the pouches and stuff, usually between 23 to 25 pounds. This plate carrier being a hyper skeletonized, hyper light design, even using my cummerbund that has all my pouches on it, it's about a half a pound lighter, I think, than usual. So this came out to be, I think, like a 24-pound loadout instead of a 25-pound. And I will say that overall, it's fine. It's getting to the point with this carrier where 24 to 25 pounds is about as far as I push it. Obviously, this is a very hyperlight skeletonized carrier. It's not meant to bear massive amounts of weight, and I assure you it's not going to do it. Like, it's not that it can't physically do it. If anything, this is perhaps better than average because these shoulder straps are part of the laminate. There's no stitching here to potentially, pull out. So, theoretically, this is capable of bearing extreme amounts of weight. But because it's such a little lightweight, super skeletonized design, physically it can't do it. And in fact, it's actually a little bit worse at bearing weight because of this than other more traditional carriers like the Beez Aptum, which is freakishly good at carrying about that 25 pounds of weight, more so than a lot of other carriers in the market, which is... Well, anyways, just go watch my previous rant about why I don't like them and understand my frustration. So, while this thing can carry my full, general purpose 25-pound loadout, realistically, I played it a little bit more, took some stuff off. I would say realistically, you should be shooting for like a 22-pound loadout. And that includes the carrier, your cummerbund, the pouches, like all together, not just your gear, all together. 22, I say, would be the sweet spot for a max loadout for this one. That's where it seems to be, not a huge difference in comfort between having it just loaded with your plates, like wearing a slick, and then adding all your extra stuff to it. Even with adding some shoulder pads, like I mentioned, I used the Velocity Systems slip over types. That did help a little bit with, cushioning the weight on your shoulders, but that in and of itself does not help it like bear the weight. Like there's a difference between comfort and weight bearing. I found, ironically, like I mentioned previously, that this thing is, if anything, just as comfortable without shoulder pads as it is with it, which is nice. You'll save yourself an extra like $40 by not having to buy shoulder pads, but it's not as big of a difference for a carrier like this as you'd think when fully loaded up. But it's definitely, like for something like the Beez Aptum type carriers, that is very capable of handling a 25-pound loadout, and I would be comfortable saying you could take a carrier like that and even scale it up to like maybe 28 pounds as its maximum. This one, I would say 25 is the max that I would load this thing up with 22 being more like the sweet spot for a max loadout. So if you're one of those people that bought those like 8-pound meme plates because you were feeling cheap that day or are poor and don't understand how much heavy weight is going to impinge on your mobility, this is not the carrier for you. if you've got really heavy plates, this ain't the one, boys. That really shouldn't be surprising to anybody, given that this is a hyper-light skeletonized plate carrier. It's not meant to bear tons of weight. Other than that, with this sole exception that you do need to watch your weight with this, it's very comfortable. Like, again, for such a simple, stripped-down design, I was expecting a lot of hot spots. I was expecting it to be very like chafy, especially in like the shoulder strap area, and like the back here with these many little hooks, little corners and shit. I was expecting a lot of just uncomfortableness that you're just going to have to sacrifice in the name of a stupidly lightweight thin carrier, and it's not the case. There's really nothing to complain about. That's I guess if you've gotten this far and into the video and watched this whole thing, the big TLDR is there's really not that much for me to complain about for once. It reminds me a lot of, I had one of the old Cry EK01s back in the day, if anyone remembers that plate carrier, and it wasn't great. It was pretty terrible actually, especially because it was very similar to this. It kind of had like a Facehugger type piece design, and then in the back, and it had like sleeves that your plates went in, and you put them there, but then the back end had like, it used a shot cord to like tighten the whole thing onto it, and that really sucked because having that shot cord pressing against your chest all the time was really uncomfortable, especially if you're wearing lightweight clothing like a t-shirt, or something you're wearing it like under a shirt. It was really uncomfortable. So it's almost like this is like somebody saw one of those and was like, I can fix that, and then they did. So that's it. That's the long and short of it. If you're looking for like a hyper light plate carrier that can fit pretty much any size plate that you want to put in it, and also pretty much any size person, considering the extreme amount of adjustability that the shoulder straps have, I am going to say that this is something that I would wholeheartedly recommend to somebody who's looking for a plate carrier like this. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say, if you're not sure what plate carrier you want, but you want something to put your plates in and you want to be able to carry like some gear, this might just be the one for that. There's really nothing you can do to break it, like outside of potentially wearing out a corner or maybe busting some stitching on the edge of here if you get like an excessive amount of use out of this back flap for some reason. That's really the only thing you could possibly break on it. Like, those are really the only areas that can go wrong. Like, there's really nothing you can fuck up. So if you're a new guy getting into this and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what plates I'm going to end up with, and I'm going to probably start with a bit smaller of an amount of gear and then sort of work my way up, or maybe I just want to carry a small amount of gear, whatever. Like I said, I'm still carrying 6 rifle mags in this thing, and it's fine, it's working. Like, you're not going to be missing out. I would christen this like the new guy plate carrier. It'd be very good at that, because it's got all the features. It'll take any placard you want, obviously, within reason, given the length between the buckles and the placard may be a little bit of an issue, but it'll take pretty much any placard. It'll attach anything to the front you want to attach to. It's got areas on the top, sides, and bottom for using to attach or route extra things to. It's got a back flap like it's supposed to have. It works really well as a back flap. The shoulder straps, not only do you not need to spend extra money to get shoulder pads to make them comfortable, but they also have a channel of rows of webbing, or because it's hollow here, you can treat it as one giant channel if you want to. And if you're going to wear it on hot days, it's stupidly easy to pair with these armor vents. For a skeletonized plate carrier, most of which over the years I've seen have been a little lacking and a little basic. And this one is basic, but it includes all the shit that I've been griping about. This is straight up like the dictionary picture definition of like brilliance in the basics. Like I said, there's a couple minor things I wish they'd have done a little bit differently, but other than that, and this is, again, this is the point I made in my recent rant with the Beez Aptum, and that is, even if some things hadn't been perfect, if the rest of it had been executed perfectly, I wouldn't be minding it, I just put up with it. This is like a case study in that, where there's a couple little things I'm like, could be better here, it should have had this, maybe I'd do this a little bit different, but this thing still works just fine, despite those minor quibbles. Maybe like for like the Gen 3 version, they can fix some of that stuff, and then, maybe offer some plate socks that aren't $75. Hint, hint. Other than that, though, if you were to buy it today right now, like, I would be like, oh, you should have waited for the Gen 3 version, lol. I'd be like, okay, yeah, it works fine, go for it. I did not expect much out of this thing when I got it, other than it being a neat idea, and have been very pleasantly surprised at how well it actually executes doing what it needs to do. Also, for the record, I've heard people call this like the Facehugger because of the fold-over design here, and this is like my one, like, do this or we riot dynamic principles, is that you absolutely have to change the name of this thing from the SLPC 2.0, which is super lame, and you have to call it the Facehugger from now on. Nobody should call us anything but the Facehugger. It's officially the Facehugger, I decree it. But overall, yep, it's good, go buy one. Editor's note, I am not sponsored by Dynamic Principles in any way.